Welcome back to SL. Chennai speaks out. Employment bonds, entrapment or discipline. Time to roll up your sleeves. Time to fight. Time for crossfire.
Please do not have a knife at the throat of a candidate and say that, I demand your loyalty, by putting a knife on his or her head. All I would like to say is, please, there are so many other ways, positive ways of retaining a person. I know people who have stuck around, who have joined as an executive and really went big, but, because, the company was good to them. So, I mean, I find it very surprising sometimes, you straight away, you put a timeline and you say, this is it, this is the time we want because of, we have trained you, we have an ownership on you, and all this stuff.
Joshua, we're talking about 1 year to 18 months. And if you're talking about stories, there is a story about, or rather the question, how many software engineers does it take to change a light bulb? At least 8, because by the time the guy climbs up the ladder, he's already on another job in another project. We can't change a light bulb. We're talking about an industry which is contributing something like 5.8% of our GDP to India, the industry that has put India on the world map, IT and ITS combined. We're talking about the fact that every time, today for example, the attrition rates are in double figures, 16% for Infosys, TCS, for all the biggies. We're talking about the fact that you're actually bleeding people saying that, okay, there's no problem, there's no bond, hop, go job hopping, you get a better offer, just job. What happens to the company in the long run? What happens to the industry in the long run? What happens to the individual in the long run? See, again, we're talking about the fact that the individual does not build up a career by job hopping, and if you start in your first 6 months, you're actually putting up black mark for yourself.
Again, 2 points, attrition is good. Trust me, when people leave sometimes, you have fresh people coming and you have fresh ideas. You're having it's like a closed room and say, nobody leaves this and, there's no fresh ideas, there's no fresh people coming in.
I'm sure Sachin Tendulkar should leave Mumbai Indians, go to Chennai Super Kings and
he might go
come to Chennai Super Kings.
Yeah.
He might go to Australia. Come to Chennai Super
Absolutely.
Kings.
I mean, and Sachin Tendulkar is hired through covenant. I'll be the most happiest person,
Even in marriage, you have to register your marriage, right?
Not necessarily, not by Indian.
No, Supreme Court says you have to.
Yeah.
You have to. Supreme Court says you have to register.
Yeah. So let's be practical about it.
Everyone.
Let's be practical about it. I think the point is, I'm not saying just by bond you can just retain the people. That's not something one is advocating.
Then why are you having bonds then?
Exactly.
I mean,
No,
if you feel
see,
that
today
why are you having that? I mean, take that away. Concentrate on the positive high.
No, I think
you make a person. Sorry, Balaji. I'll just make this point. You make a person stay. A person who doesn't want to stay. You make him or her stay in a company. I mean, that's really absurd for me because that person will actually badmouth.
Is it a case of Rolling Stones gather no bonds?
Exactly, that is
Not that,
absolutely.
Sanjay. The point is that what he's highlighting is an Indian governmental procedure of a 100-year-old traditional procedure that is applied to a global business.
Absolutely.
He talks about army and Indian government companies applied to a global business. It's a completely
really.
anachronism, I would
today,
say. It doesn't
most
apply.
of the international companies have real clauses on data protection. Companies, particularly I'm talking about the Fortune 10 companies, Fortune 50 companies. If you are a senior manager, you can't be working in a high-tech area. You can't be working in R&D that you are privy to a lot of information and suddenly go and work for a competitor. I'm sure you would have signed similar bonds with your company. So,
not a bond, it's an ethic compliance.
You
can call whatever way.
That's fair. You don't want to join.
When you join the Indian Army and they ask you, do you have it in you?
Yeah.
They also ask you whether you have this in you, the loyalty to stay on and to fight for your country.
I think
so therefore, you go into it with it's not, go into it with the knowledge and belief that this is what you're meant to do.
Yeah.
And I think Indian military, Indian Army is a unique entity. It's a unique organization. There is no competition. So they are only protecting the country, which is quite acceptable.
This is another point is.
I mean, fair enough. The point Venkat made. I mean, I'm not worried that a person who works in Indian Army will probably join some other army, right? That's not going to happen, right? Please.
Courts are also taking a balanced view. Yes. Because they are concerned about intellectual property rights.
I agree.
They are concerned about violation of data protection. If India need to be really a country which has to be in the global world, you need to bring some of these things. Otherwise, we will, in a globalizing world, India will be a village. I mean, I don't think that's what we want. Everybody want us to be integrating with the global economy.
Balaji,
right.
well taken, Balaji. But what Nina said is that a person joins a company for 18 months, he or she doesn't know anything, doesn't contribute
When they
anything.
start, when they start.
Where does the indemnity come from?
Absolutely, and the revenge that the company takes now is not, just going to court. I'm sure that companies now realize that going to court, is not going to help them either. So what they do to an employee who quits is, I'm not going to give you a relieving letter, I'm not going to give you an experience certificate, I'm not going to give you a good background verification. So they get it out on things
But
like
today
that.
you don't need that. There are a lot of people who go with pay slips and that will do. Why do you need a relieving letter?
Exactly.
No,
last
not really. I mean,
contract is your
today,
payslip.
today the world
bank
is
statement.
today the world is moving into a scenario where any of the the good companies insist on relieving letters. I'm sure no company, absolutely.
Yeah, so
if you don't have a relieving letter, you don't have an experience certificate, you don't you call up your last company and check, and if that guy gives a bad ref check, even if I join a company and I have a bad ref check, I'm out of the company.
So what do you do then? Follow the feet of your boss or what?
That's what happens, I mean, that's why what I said, tattoo the company
Okay, so
logo,
then, which means unless you part on cordial terms, your
Exactly.
future could have a permanent black mark. It's the stain of original sin in a sense.
No, Sanjay, that's not the point. I think the point is you can break the bond provided you repay the company. See, because when you sign a contract or whatever it is, you
But
do
a
something.
company with thousands of crores turnover
Right.
wants to spite an employee who's getting 50 or 75,000.
No, but tell me one
An
thing.
employee who
It's
wants to
not
go for
just
better
one
prospects.
employee.
An employee may want to go for higher studies and he may need
Listen.
that work experience and then he leaves
No,
after that.
if a company on an average spends about 2.5 lakhs of rupees
Exactly.
in training a, let's say, a
For
software
6
engineer,
months.
imagine if 1,000 people leave. So
That
you
is
have to
not
multiply 2.5 lakhs into 1,000, and
enough.
that is sizable
May
money.
I ask, when the company spends, so-called spends 2.5 lakhs, what do they call? They call that we invest on the employee.
Sure.
It is a risk involved. Any investment has a risk involved. So
Yeah.
company has to bear the
You
risk.
make the
That
It is a
investment.
matter of risk
That's what your
management.
contract
You
is
make
all
the
about.
As
investment.
simple as that.
To mitigate that risk.
I wouldn't agree that a
Try to
company.
mitigate that
I mean, I would advise, put it in, the bottom line of the offer letter, this is subject to market risk.
Like mutual funds.
Absolutely, like mutual
What
funds.
is-
Put it there. This is subject
All
to
right.
market risk.
All right, so along with your offer letter, also give them a red herring prospectus.
No, I think, we talk about investment. As investors, whether you are an individual, you may be a shareholder in some of these IT companies. And as a shareholder, if your IT company doesn't make money, are you going to be happy? You are not going to be happy. You are going to sell the shares.
Tell me which shareholder has signed a bond with the company.
No, it is
You
not
know,
the
you- you-
shareholder
you
who
give
signed
us
the bond.
freedom. You give us
Shareholder, we are
freedom.
talking about lasting value for
No,
the company.
I'm talking about putting
created
your.
only by employees.
I'm talking about, put your employees, treat your employees as partners, don't treat them like bonded laborers, you're putting a chain on them, treat them like partners and they're going to stick around with you.
Sanjay, may I ask
Please.
one question?
Yeah,
What
sure.
is the basis? Let me understand the basis of this bond. What is it aimed at? What is the objective of it? Protecting what?
We are saying that freshers who join for about 1.5 years, it's not in a bond now, it's an agreement or a contract. For that 1.5 years, you stay with the company, and after that, you're free to leave.
What is the letter and spirit of the bond? What is it aimed at? What is the objective?
I think the letter.
What are we trying to achieve here?
When the HP CEO resigned and went and joined Oracle, HP sued him because they believe by joining this, you will be compromising on a lot of trade secrets.
Most are
then you
just
go.
jumping onto a musical carousel from all the 3 or 4 biggies, and they're just going from one multicolored cafeteria to the next one. There is no difference between the companies.
You don't give an employee growth. I'll tell you another
But
story.
answer that, Ramesh is saying they are playing musical chairs.
Fair enough,
just
because I'll
playing
tell you why.
And it helps you. And it actually helps your business. That's why you're
Absolutely.
taking the stand.
No,
Helps your business.
Sanjay, the world is a stage, so they have to play musical chair.
No, I'll tell you
Alright.
this. I'll tell you this. This is a perfect answer for Nina. And a boss looked at an employee and said, it's just been 1 year since you joined. After you joined, in 2 weeks you were so smart, I made you a team leader. In 6 months you were like really smart, I made you a manager. In 8 months I made you an AVP. And after 1 year you're so good, I thought I'm going to make
I'll
you
give
a
you in marriage to my daughter.
No. No. No, it's not like that. I'm going to make you a CEO, and this is so helpful for me because a fresher became a CEO in 1 year, and the boss said, I'm going to retire. And the candidate looked at the boss and said, thank you, daddy. Because this happens only in a dad-son relationship. This growth doesn't really happen in this kind of an environment. Come on, Nina. You got to agree with this.
No, I refuse to agree with it, because this is exactly the fundamental part of the problem. We're talking about organizations which are hiring in thousands. We're talking about the need for additional thousands, And we are saying every time you do this, you are actually giving a discontinuity in the business process.
And you can't expect the company to be a sugar daddy, can you?
Yeah.
There is always a bitter pill to be
True,
swallowed.
Sanjay. A bond by definition means there is a obligation on either party which should be equal. So what is
Let's
the
talk about
what
that.
is the
what
guarantee?
What are the employees doing towards
Correct.
that bond?
What is
are they
the-
contributing?
So what is the employee's responsibility?
What is the guarantee that the company is going to last during the duration of the bond?
What is the employee's
Is there any
responsibility
indemnity for the
during the period of the
employees
bond?
that they will be saved if the company falls down?
You want to answer that, Balaji? That's an interesting point.
No, I think typically if you talk about any of these bonds or whatever it is, I don't think any bonds I have seen is more than, let's say, 2 years or 3 years. Typically it is just 2 years. So I don't think, if you're talking about a sizable company with a reputation, they're likely to survive for 2 years. It is not that, unless otherwise some Enron kind of a debacle happens and people go away. Otherwise,
But
2
when
years.
that happens, what he wants to know, when that happens, do you then give them 1 month's salary for every year of service, for instance? Do you give them that? You let them in the lurch.
Correct.
But when they leave on their own for better prospects, then you penalize them. That's a slightly unfair principle, is what he's
And
saying.
what happened last year in recession? There are so many people who've been oozed out of the company. Did the company pay them? I mean, there are always two sides of the loyalty again. Why do you want loyalty only from an employee's point of view? Why can't the companies be loyal?
Good companies which are responsible corporate citizen, they have paid them. They have given 6 months severance packages. They have outplaced people. I don't think we can use the same brush and paint every company
Fair
together.
enough,
But these companies, do they follow the best practices of the bond? What is the strategic things that you do in addition to this bond? What is the due diligence strategic initiative that you take to retain employees?
Venkat, as I said, good world-class companies which are gold standard, they have a judicious mix. Okay, they have a judicious mix of, like I said, employee empowerment, giving them feedback, giving them good facility, showing them a career path, giving them a career map, everything, which is all what I would call as the soft part of it. They also kind of mix that with an employment contract, which will have clauses like, non-disclosure agreements. Today, non-disclosure agreements are very important, to protect your own trade secrets. So you should
Well
have.
put. That's all the time we have for on this segment. But is offense the best form of defense? Find out after a short break on SL Chennai Speaks Out when we have the audience ask them questions. It's called Public Punch. Stay tuned.